While the rest of the year offers so much promise, what with the arrival of the next generations of consoles, 2020 has so far been an amazing year for new indie game releases. With that in mind, we've whittled all of these down to our top 10 must-plays from across all of your favourite storefronts, and in this video, we count them down from 10 all the way to number 1. Will your favourite game of the year so far make the cut? Let's take a look. Released right at the end of January, Coffe Talk is a chilled-out visual novel where you play as a coffee shop barista, all within an alternate reality Seattle where humans and mythical creatures live together in an uneasy coexistence. At its heart, Coffe Talk is a visual novel, and aside from sections where you're tasked with pulling together customers' orders, it's essentially a passive experience which you're able to sit back and take in the story as it unfolds. It aims high, and I mean really high. Within the 3.5 or so hours it takes to cover, it covers a huge range of topics: social anxiety, depression, AAA game developer crunch, alcoholism, police brutality, and plenty more societal issues. And while all of them have their own depth and possible narrative directions, Coffe Talk only really skims the surface, with it lacking, say, the lens-like analysis and storytelling as seen in Papers, Please, Not Tonight, or Mutazione. While that sounds overly negative, where Coffe Talk positively shines is in its characters, those you meet, and how the art style and soundscapes all mix so beautifully together, from the muffled sound of the falling rain outside to the sultry jazz playing in the background. The pixel art animations, particularly the facial expressions, are unlikely to be bettered perhaps all year, and aside from its faults, it is something visual novel fans are likely to enjoy. Coffe Talk is available on PC and all of the usual consoles. At number 9, One Step from Eden came out in late March for PC and the Switch, and it's a mix-up of quite a few different genres. And while we're in a totally honest frame of mind, none of us here at Get Indie Gaming are particularly good at it. That said, it's still a super fun game, where there's just so much going on at any one point in time that it can feel overwhelming and yet brilliant at the same time. Slay the Spire is one such influence, as is the Mega Man Battle Network, where the combat here takes place on a 4x8 grid that's split between you and your enemy. While you begin with the one character, battling your way through the game sees more added to the roster, while also giving you additional outfits and accessories. As for the combat, it's very, very fast, with you needing to juggle and pay close attention to what's going on, all the while managing your deck of cards. We've been really taken aback with this deck building elements, and they're very, very well implemented, but be warned, all in it's a tough experience that might be too much for some. At number 8, Cloudpunk offers up and firmly delivers on all of the usual, let's call them formulae of such games within a Blade Runner-esque style. We have the visuals with the neon tinge, the expansive cityscape, and of course the hovering cars, and all-round humming dotted signage around the buildings, although there are welcome differences here. Unlike the more usual protagonists in such games, in Cloudpunk, you play the part of a humble delivery driver called Rania, a newcomer and immigrant to the city on their first night working for the titular semi-legal delivery company. You receive your jobs by way of a radio, with you having to pick up and delivery addresses which you're asked to work out under 2 simple rules: never miss a delivery, and never ask what's in the packages. You're essentially free to play this one how you feel. You can bend the rules or toss them out completely, while allowing yourself to get wrapped up in other people's stories, with there much fun to be had in trying to be right up nosy when meeting new people and interacting with them. Above everything though is how pretty the city is, with it being a huge delight just to get out there and explore it. It's easy to simply potter about the place, and I found this a genuine source of relaxation come the end of the day. Cloudpunk is currently available for Steam, with perhaps a console release coming at some point down the line.
Enter a future where crime rules the streets. When the citizens are in trouble, they call the authorities. When the authorities are in trouble, they call the bounty hunters.
Showtime!
Up next at number 7, we have Huntdown, which only came out a few days ago as this video airs. Now this one gives us so many pangs and feelings of the days in the late 80s and early 90s, where spending a Saturday afternoon in the arcade with a bag full of coins was the high point of the week. In Huntdown, you're a bounty hunter in a super retro action comedy arcade shooter. You can play solo or in co-op with another person, all within graffiti-strewn 1980s inspired cities. The graphics are all hand-painted, and with them looking to recreate the looks of the 16-bit era, although in this one, the animations are super smooth and come at a 60 frames per second rate, with it all just looking so gorgeous. Sure, there are plenty of others who've done this too, and perhaps there's nothing overly outstanding in terms of this pushing gaming or the genre forwards, although right now, we don't really care. This alongside Streets of Rage 4 has been quite the revelation. Huntdown is out by way of the Epic Games Store, where it has a 1-year exclusive. It's also out on the Switch, PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. At number 6 and out towards the end of April, Moving Out has become our number 1 couch co-op game of the current generation, with the Overcooked series having been relegated to the 2nd position. As we said in our full review, which you can find a link to in the video description or by following the card on screen now, it's the unmitigated beauty within the chaos this game can bring which puts it on top. In Overcooked, like in Real World Kitchens, if you play and stick to your station, you can generally make a decent meal of things, although here, there's none of that, and while you can try to coordinate and move by way of, let's call them, a foreman, the gameplay doesn't tend to allow for that kind of strictness. It's just too easy for everybody to go off and do their own thing, and in doing so, well, as I said earlier, it all turns into disorganised chaos. Moving Out is glorious. It's couch co-op perfection and a must-play for anyone who loves the genre, and it can be gotten hold of across PC and all the usual consoles. Up next at number 5, and while Curse of the Dead Gods is only out in early access, this roguelike isometric dungeon crawler, well, it's already a first-rate experience and the best of its kind out all year so far. While it features the normal fighting elements and procedural generation you'll see in any typical garden dungeon crawler, and yet here in Curse of the Dead Gods, we have certain other things that just really push it forwards. We particularly like the ability to collect mystical relics alongside a huge array of weaponry, although with each run, something called corruption seeps into you, which you're able to embrace such powers or completely ignore them. The choice here is yours to take. This early access launch is said to contain around a third of the final content, and if you usually pass up on such early access games because you think, well, they're not completed, we're thinking there may be no better example of an early access done right in the whole of 2020. At number 4, In Other Waters is set underwater on an alien planet, with it featuring a xenobiologist called Ellery Vass, who amongst other things is out in the ocean looking to find her missing research partner. In a twist with it subverting the more usual convention, you're not playing as the central protagonist, but rather as her helper, controller, assistant and guide, with you being an AI installed within a dive suit Ellery makes use of to navigate around the ocean. From a visual perspective, it's all certainly striking, with it using a minimal but vibrant and limited colour palette, which further concentrates the game's overall aesthetic and identity. Putting aside the UI and other visuals, what also works so very well is the game's narrative, without which things would be perhaps a touch superficial, although that's simply not the case. The dialogue between you and Ellery has an absolutely stunning flow to it that's completely natural, and in places, well, it's so very touching. Same is true of the descriptions of the specimens, plants and other such creatures you see within the description boxes of the suit's UI, and it's so very easily to mentally create an image of the ecology and underwater geography from the text alone, and the contours of the map, which adds yet more visual signposts. Just like the sense we got from interacting with the UI, our movements through the ocean, together with all the observations and analysis, creates a further sense of everything being, well, for want of a better word, kind of real. And when we think about that, overall it's a stunning experience. In Other Waters is available on Steam and the Nintendo Switch. At number 3 and from mid-March, Ori and the Will of the Wisps is one of those games where the screenshots and trailers, in all honesty, well, simply do not capture how exquisitely beautiful everything is. It's stunning, an absolute beauty, with it being indistinguishable from most major Hollywood animated blockbusters. With this being true about almost everything you meet within the game, it's also very convincing and right up there with the very best. In comparison to the original, there's a deeper focus here on combat rather than the precision platforming, and at the start poor little Ori is woefully underpowered, although once the upgrades start to stack up, you can be a decent match for the enemies and bosses, which are more often than not a fairly decent level of challenge. As for the story, well, without going into spoiler territory, it delivers on the same kind of themes as the original, with it addressing topics such as loss and redemption, and while at its bare bones it's a story about light and dark, it avoids the simplistic good versus evil, and overall, it does everything you'd want from a sequel, with it also pushing visual artistry of this medium to new heights. Ori and the Will of the Wisps is a stunning achievement, and can be played on PCs via Steam, the Windows Store, and the Xbox One. At number 2, Signs of the Sojourner is a card game about compassion, relationships, and communication where your deck is your character, and echoes the experiences you have while playing the game. As you do, your deck expands and changes, and it shapes your experiences and relationships with those around you. Differing decks lead to different narrative journeys, as your cards impact and change your ability to communicate with others, with you also needing to figure out what sort of person you want to be and how you're seen and relate to others. It's full of hopefulness and compassion. The ending is a sum of every card played and decision you've taken. It really is enchanting, and the hand-drawn environments and pared back but beautiful soundtrack means this little hidden gem could be very much what many people are looking for. Signs of the Sojourner came out on May 14th by way of Steam, with a port expected onto the Switch later in the year. And finally, our number 1 game of the year so far, Lair of the Clockwork God is the third in the Ben and Dan series. It's also handsomely written, with it genuinely delivering laugh after laugh all the way through. Hitting the high comedic notes within video games is notoriously difficult, and yet in this game, this aspect is so very charmingly nailed. In all honesty, we played this individually and together as a group, and we simply can't recall having laughed so much or as loudly at any video game as we did with this one. It's not just the writing or the art direction and the comedy which makes it so very good. What really works so well is how the two principal characters play off against each other and how they work within the environment. With one, you play as an old school point and click adventurer, with the other, the one looking to push things forward, adopting the play styles and gameplay of a platformer. Perhaps naturally enough, you switch between each character, and while occasions we found a few control issues, the point and click and platforming elements all come together, and some of the puzzles are eye-poppingly brilliant in terms of greatness when you complete them. It's also very silly, it's rude, and it's crude, although it's never cruel. It's also a game about getting that little bit older, about accepting change or staying comfortable with what you know, and it's brilliant. Our game of the year so far, by a country mile. And that's it. Those are our top 10 best indie games out this year so far. Be sure to let us know what you think down in the comments, and if you've liked this video, please click the like button to help with the algorithm. And if you've yet to do so, now's a perfect time to subscribe to the channel with the notification bells turned on. Either way, thanks for watching. We'll see you all again here soon for another indie game video.